Welcome to the Big Dreams, Great Teams podcast, where we dive into the art of hiring, leadership, and building incredible teams. I'm Paula Maidens, your host, a hiring and leadership coach. Today, we're tackling a really important, crucial topic for every small business owner, and that is how to attract and retain loyal team members, loyal employees. So let's dive into that hugely relevant and important topic today. Let's go. Let's start by defining what loyalty means. Now, for me, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who started 3 businesses in the last 14 years, loyalty isn't just about just showing up to work every day. It's about so much more than that. It's about a deeper commitment to my team and to my business. It's about, people who take responsibility, who appreciate the effort that I'm putting into them, the team, my business, and who genuinely support my vision and goals. And I've certainly been really fortunate to work with some very loyal team members in the last 14 years. And in fact, the 7 years before that, when I was leading people from a corporate perspective as well. And I thought I'd start today by sharing with you a few key examples of people, of the way that they've worked, that really stand out in my mind to illustrate what loyalty actually looks like and feels like to me, to help you crystallize for yourself, what loyalty truly looks like for you. So we can kind of peel back the layers a little bit more from this, broad sweeping general word that is loyalty or loyal, a loyal team member. So the first example that came to mind is somebody who steps in and offers to help. So somebody who steps in and shares some of the load. In my first business, I had this beautiful loyal team member called Tracy, and I actually found myself in hospital having had an accident surfing. It was a Saturday. I was awaiting surgery the next morning, and I had to run in-house training on site at a client the following week. Now, Tracy, without hesitation, took that workload, ran with it, and made absolutely no fuss. And her readiness and willingness to just dive in and help last minute and do whatever it took to be able to do that work for me really stands out in my brain as a beautiful demonstration of the loyal character that she was and the loyal team member that she was on my team. So another example that springs to mind is my virtual assistant. Now, my current virtual assistant takes ownership of her role and her workload. And one of the things that I've noticed that she does is she keeps me informed about her availability. For example, when she's going on holidays, she'll prompt me. She'll obviously let me know in advance that they're coming up, but then she doesn't leave it to me to remember or to diarize, between the time of her taking and when it's actually happening, that I'm meant to remember that it's happening. So she takes responsibility for the fact that she's going on holidays and, prompts me as we get closer to it and almost does a little bit of a countdown so I know. And I guess for me, a loyal team member is somebody who kind of owns the role, but also owns their impact on the team and knows that when they're away, that's going to have an impact and takes responsibility for minimizing that impact, if that makes sense. So when I think about loyalty, I also think about the team members who appreciate the effort that I'm putting into, bonding and building and connecting the team. They appreciate the effort that I put in, and then they express gratitude for that. That might be, them saying yes to being available to come along to a team building exercise. I even got, I don't know what quite I was thinking, but I arranged a team bonding activity once where we all went abseiling down the side of the cliff. And, good on all those people for saying yes and actually having a go. I think I might have been the person who was most scared at the top of the cliff, to be fair. But when I think of loyal team members, it's people who kind of just are willing to have a go, are acknowledging the effort that you're putting in when you put on these team activities, when you put on team bonding events, and they come along and participate with energy and enthusiasm. So, it's like that participation, whether it's a team dinner or a meeting or a funny activity like abseiling down a cliff. When I think of what loyalty means to me, it's also those attributes that stand out in my mind. I also remember a time when I accidentally found myself underpaying somebody on my team. It was in my first business and it was a completely innocent, accidental mistake. That team member came to me. She sought advice. She actually rung up the Fair Work to double check with them that her understanding of what she should be being paid, was correct. And they very reasonably told her to come and have a chat to me about it. So she just brought it straight to me. I admitted my mistake. I explained that it was a totally innocent mistake and we got it fixed up very, very quickly, of course, and her being back paid and all the things. So I guess, the issue was resolved nice and quickly. But if I think of loyalty, I also think of somebody who is okay with me making mistakes, who sees things as a potential mistake, who comes to chat to me about it. And, it doesn't need to turn into a really big thing. That was another example of that team member being loyal. She stayed with me for years. She was fantastic. Which brings me to another way that many people have demonstrated loyalty to me in the past is that when it is time for them to move on, knowing that not everybody stays with you forever, even though you might like them to, people who have given me plenty of notice and given me a heads up through having a beautiful relationship and open, transparent conversations. In fact, one of my studio managers that I had at the yoga studio actually gave me a heads up months before she made her decision that she was considering moving home to New Zealand, which would affect her ability to be the studio manager. Now, this was just a thought in her mind. And, this to me really demonstrated her loyalty because she wanted me to know that it was a thought in her mind that she hadn't decided, but this may be something on the radar which may come to fruition in 2, 3, 4 months' time. Now, that's pretty extreme, but I've certainly had lots of employees who have given me notice beyond their contracted amount where possible. Like, I know it's not always possible, it's particularly if they're going to another job, the other job needs you urgently, et cetera, et cetera. I know that's not always possible, but for me, a characteristic that I see is somebody, giving you a heads up, giving you extra notice if they can, because that loyalty and responsibility and commitment to the team, to the business, they still feel that even though they're moving on from the business. So that's definitely these things that come to mind. And I hope sharing with you those examples have started to trigger some reflection in you as to what loyalty looks like to you, how you'd like people to show up, how you want them to act, so that you can sort of start peeling back the layers and go a little bit beyond the general word that is loyal and see what truly you want from the people and what loyalty looks and feels like for you in your business. Because when you're clear on what loyalty means to you, then you can start to move forward, which is what we're going to dive into now, which is how do you attract these people to come and work for you and stay on your team? Okay, so now we're diving into how do you attract these types of people? How do you attract these loyal people to come and work for you? Now, you might think that I'm going to say, well, they all go and hang out on Seek, so post your ads over there, but I'm not. In fact, I think if you've been listening for a while, you probably knew that's not what I was going to say. So the really great thing is that this is more in your control than what you might think, because it's less about you finding them and it's less about you thinking of this as finding the needle in the haystack, that person who's really, really loyal. And it's more about you reflecting inwards and looking at what you're doing and what you can be doing differently and better so that these people want to work with you and they want to stay with you. Because attracting and retaining loyal team members starts with you and looking at who you need to be and how you need to act to create a supportive environment that draws in loyal team members. So let's talk about that, about how you can cultivate a team environment that in itself will attract and retain the loyal type of people who you want to be surrounded by and working for you. So let's talk about creating a supportive environment and start there. This means fostering and creating an environment where people feel valued and supported. And, a lot of people talk about this as culture, and I'll be talking about culture in a moment. But if we just talk for the moment about this being an environment and a way that you're working that is evident and that you refer to in every aspect of your business, from, what you write in your job advertisements, how you respond to people who apply to you, the way you conduct interviews, the way you onboard people, the way you delegate to them, the way you communicate to them when mistakes happen, when things go well, when things don't go so well, etc., etc. That's what we mean by creating and fostering a supportive work environment. And my question to you is, if I was to ask someone on your team whether the reality of the job that they're performing matched, the cover of the job, the impression that they had of the job based on the advertisement, based on the interview, do you think they'd say yes? Or do you think that there's been some surprises along the way? So transparency, this concept of clarity and transparency, is so important. And it really comes into play when you're writing your job advertisement, when you're conducting your interview. I want you to think of it as almost like the opposite of like posturing. And it's the opposite of sort of, faking it until you make it. Because you don't want to posture and try to be a certain type of CEO or leader, or try and be a certain type of business that you're not. It's fully and completely about taking the time to get clear on actually like who you can be, who you want to be, who you need in your business, what you can expect from them, and in turn what your business can offer, and presenting that really clearly from the outset, and presenting it in a way that's really compelling, that's enticing, absolutely, assessing to that in the interview, setting expectations, talking to that, etc. Because this concept of being clear allows you to be transparent, which in turn allows you to set the right expectations from the start with your future team member. And therefore they will feel supported from that first moment, not in the you're going to hold their hand the whole way kind of being supported way. I mean, they'll feel supported in that they won't be surprised and they won't feel duped, a month down the track when they're in the job and the reality of the job is totally different to what they thought the job was going to be. So that's what I mean when I talk about creating a supportive environment and creating one from a place of transparency. And it's very hard to be transparent if you aren't clear. The second key element that I want to talk about and talk to you being is leading by example. Now, your actions, what you do on a day-to-day basis, the experience that your team members have with you on a day-to-day basis, needs to align with your words that might be on your cultural statement, or your words that might be, the way you described your business in your advertisement. So I actually listened to an amazing podcast recently. It's one of the Diary of the CEO podcasts with Steve Bartlett, and he interviewed the former Netflix CEO, a gentleman named Mark, and he talked about culture. And what he said, and I'll quote it here, is culture is not aspirational, it's observational. Culture is how the founders behave, the leaders behave, and the longest standing members of the team behave. So if you're not acting in a certain way, then your culture won't be any different. So when I say leading by example, I don't mean working the hardest or working the longest or being the first in and the first out. And I think from a corporate perspective, if we think about leading by example, certainly from my time in corporate, leading by example meant working the hardest and the longest for sure. So that is not what I mean now. What I do mean is leading by example insofar as you're being true to your word, which might mean meeting deadlines or acknowledging it if you can't meet a deadline, rather than putting your head in the sand and thinking, I'm the boss, it doesn't matter. And in turn, by leading by example, being true to your word, showing commitment to your team and showing commitment to your business and to the importance of the role that they're doing in your business by showing up, by honoring your word. If you can't honor it, you can't meet a deadline, acknowledging that, maybe you make a mistake, admitting that, and just being seen to be real. Being transparent, being authentic, and be striving to improve yourself as a leader and as a business. And it also means, leading by example also means being consistent. Because when you act like that, when you act in a way whereby, you honor your word, you meet deadlines. If you're not going to meet deadlines, then, you let people know that. If you make a mistake, you admit it, et cetera, et cetera. If if you're consistent, you're striving for improvement. All those words I just said, they sound like a pretty good culture, right? So if you act that way, that will become the culture in your business because it will be observational, not just aspirational. And that's the sort of place that loyal, high-performing team members want to work. So let's touch on consistency for a moment. When you as the leader act in a way that is consistent, you will automatically help your team to feel more safe, more secure, because they can trust you. When someone feels safe and secure, they are more likely to take risks. And often those risks leads to proactivity, initiative, and the performance that you truly desire, because they know how to predict you. They know what to expect from you. They know how you're likely to react if something goes well and if something goes wrong. And in turn, when people can predict you, they know what to expect from you, they can trust you, and if they like it, they'll stay. Hence, they'll become the loyal team member who you retain in your business. And in the same sort of breath, I want to talk about the importance of showing appreciation, because those loyal people who we want on our team, those people who act in a way which feels like loyalty to us, those people want to feel valued. They want their effort acknowledged, and they want to feel like they're not doing something for no reason. Over the years, I have seen so many entrepreneurs and business owners operating in such a disorganized way. And while I get it completely, often what isn't noticed and the oversight is that the lack of realization that operating in this disorganized way has a massive effect on the people of your team. Whether that's you changing your mind, coming up with a last minute idea, pivoting priorities. And I'm putting my hand up here. I've done these things. We've all done these things. And sometimes it's completely unavoidable, 100%. But sometimes it is completely avoidable, but you're doing it anyway, because you're just giving yourself permission to not be organized, to not think in advance, to not sit down and actually map out what the priorities are and communicate them well. And when this happens, what can easily go unnoticed and overlooked by you as the business owner is the time and the effort that the team, the whole team, or maybe someone on your team has put into the work they've done to that point that is no longer needed, that is being deprioritized, etc. And I'm going to put my hand up again and say, I have done this. So, I'm not sort of having this conversation or saying this from a place of being perfect Polly here in the corner, because that is not the reality. So it will happen to you. It's happened to me. And when it does, it's so important that you acknowledge the effort. In fact, I vividly remember, it was probably about 2 years ago now, I had an OBM working with me and I got her to completely map out the launch of a new offer, only to completely change my mind less than a week later and decide that I'm not going to launch that thing, which, understandably, she said to me, well, then that was not the greatest use of my time, was it? And so that allowed me to go, yeah, I need to be better prepared. I need to be more organized, and I need to acknowledge this person and thank them for the work that they've put in and acknowledge that that's not ideal, and then reflect on myself and think, I probably need to not do this again, or not do this very often, because that person doesn't get to benefit or see the next steps or see the flow-on effect of the hard work that they've put in. And yes, their wasted time means my wasted money, completely my problem, but also them not seeing the fruits of their labor and them becoming disconnected and feeling like, what's the point of it? Also my problem down the track if they don't stay with you, if you continue to act like this, and they in turn won't stay with you on your team. So people feeling valued, you acknowledging the effort and the time that people putting in, you operating in an organized way, all these things contribute to you attracting and retaining these loyal team members that you want. So when we're talking about people feeling valued, that's also about you looking for the positive as well as the negative, because you won't build loyalty if all you do is point out and talk about the mistakes and skip over all the good stuff that gets done as well. Yes, mistakes need to be addressed. Yes, they need to be discussed. 100%. I'm not saying skip over them, but they need to be addressed and discussed in a balanced way where we're also celebrating the little wins and acknowledging the positive things that are being done and acknowledging the effort and the time that's gone in to the whole picture. So, this concept of showing appreciation, of acknowledging effort, of supporting people to feel valued, it's a simple but often overlooked factor. And it's a really big one if you want to have a workforce, a team, a bunch of employees who are loyal to you. So acknowledging effort, acknowledging and saying thank you can come in so many different formats. And it's about doing it in a way that feels authentic to you. Maybe that's just a verbal thank you privately. Maybe it's a call out in a team meeting. Maybe it's a handwritten note. Maybe it's paying people on time. It's one of the ways that I acknowledge people's effort and say thank you to them, is to pay, not only pay runs on time, but pay invoices and things on time. And, if there's a public holiday, I'll always pay early. I talk to my clients about sending handwritten cards or handwritten notes at Christmas to their team, just with some words of appreciation. Because nobody gets anything in the mail anymore, do we? So it's that little extra effort that you've put in that the person can appreciate and then maybe show their partner or show their kids or something like that. So taking a few minutes to acknowledge someone's effort and to show gratitude is a huge factor in building that loyalty, because often you hire somebody with the potential to be super loyal, but it's what you do and don't do with them once they're working for you that will actually define and decide, are they as loyal to you for as long as what you'd hoped? So that brings me to the last point that I want to talk to, which is prioritizing work-life balance. Now, if you've been listening to me for a while, as a business owner, this is something that I am huge on. And as a coach and a consultant to my clients, it's something that I'm very big on supporting them to achieve and improve. And what I'm here saying today is that I encourage you as a business owner to prioritize the work-life balance of your team. Because loyal employees, the people who you want to show up in the way that you want them to show up, demonstrating all these things, proactivity, initiative, giving you the heads up, being transparent, all these things, or certainly all the examples that I've talked about, these people also have personal lives, and they want those personal lives to be respected. They want to be able to have boundaries. And this is a really tricky one for you as the entrepreneur, often in a fast growing business or a business that's not necessarily always fast growing, but where you're kind of in that phase where you're sort of working things out. Like, it can often feel hard to be organized when you don't actually necessarily know what's around the corner. So the way you can support your team to have a work-life balance and support yourself to have a work-life balance does require you to be organized and to at least try to be as organized as you can be and try to limit last-minute requests. So I'm not saying eliminate, I'm saying limit or reduce, and try to be organized, knowing we don't need to be perfect. That's the first thing. The second thing, it also requires you to be realistic when you're allocating roles and allocating tasks to roles, and not put your head in the sand when someone's job has been loaded up and up and up and up, and you're just kind of, choosing to just not acknowledge that perhaps that's not a job for just one person anymore, because we need team members to be operating with space so that they can actually have boundaries, so that they don't need to feel guilt or shame or like they're letting you or the team or the business down if they're trying to actually hold those boundaries or prioritize, kids assembly or a sick child or whatever it is that they might need to do. So, we need the roles to not be so full that those things are actually, in theory, said, but not practically possible. And then the third thing that you need to do as a business owner to be able to support your team to prioritize work-life balance is for you to actually be realistic about what's actually required. Are you the sort of business who launches 4 times a year? In which case, be clear on what the intensity of that launch time and what it requires. And when you're interviewing people, be clear about it so that they have the opportunity to opt in and to assess from the outset, does it work in my life? Does that work with my work-life balance ideals? And opt into whether that's okay with them, as opposed to not discussing it, not being clear on it, and not giving somebody the ability to opt in, and then facing that situation when they're trying to hold a boundary that's never been discussed and you're in a peak period of business where you require more. So, the 3 prongs to you being able to support your team to prioritize their work-life balance is you being organized and limiting last-minute requests, limiting or reducing, not eliminating. Secondly, it requires you to be realistic with roles and work allocation. And third, it's you being, thinking about, well, when are the peak periods in our business, and making sure that you're clear on them and you talk to that up front and you give the person the ability to opt in to whether that actually suits them and whether they want to work like that. And I guess to that point, I've seen so many entrepreneurs, business owners, who are hire to a wish list of the way they wish their business would run, wish their team would operate, as opposed to the way they actually do run and do operate. Now, yes, you want to hire from the sense of improving, always improving from where you are, but you also want to hire in a realistic way whereby you give the person a realistic picture of the way it is and you talk to how you want to improve and where you want to be, but you don't hire pretending to be something that you're not, because that just does not serve anybody a month, 2, 3 months down the track. And it's certainly not the way to attract and retain loyal team members who stay with you for the long haul and really grow with your business, which is what I know we all want. Okay, so I think that you can see and you've heard that it's not about finding loyal unicorns and looking for the needle in the haystack. It's about you being clear what you can offer, what you're willing to offer, the reality of where your business actually is, and truly being committed to being the best version of yourself as a leader. And then when you do that, you're putting your best foot forward to attract and retain loyal team members. Because from that place of reality and clarity, then you can write a beautiful job advertisement that shares exactly where you are and what you're trying to be and where you're growing to. You can interview from that place of clarity and you can transparently make promises from that place of clarity. You can welcome the person into your business without your fingers crossed, worrying about maybe they won't like the reality that they found after they've accepted the job, because you know you've hired for a true match of where you are, what you need, where you're going, and you've laid that all out on the table and you've given the person the opportunity to opt into that. And I promise you that when someone realizes they're working for somebody who's transparent, who's trying to be the best version of themselves every day, and notice I didn't say they're not working for someone who's perfect or who's got everything sorted, because that person doesn't exist. But when people realize they're working for someone who wants to be transparent, who wants to improve, who admits their mistakes and supports others, and they've chosen to opt into the situation they've found themselves in, they will in turn be the best version of themselves, which will at the end of the day look like a loyal team member for you who's performing well, who's being proactive and is striving to be better every day. So I guess I want you to view loyalty as this two-way street. When you fall short, pick yourself up, keep trying, admit it, be authentic, be transparent, be committed, keep going. And when you see them falling short, making a mistake, be supportive whilst also being transparent, resetting expectations, and, continuing to be committed to them and the journey that they're on in your business. So before I wrap up, I do want to acknowledge and say that this will take time and effort. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't, but putting the time and effort into creating this environment in your business, the one that will foster loyalty, will in turn drive performance and create a greater return of investment, because you'll be positioning your team to thrive, both personally and professionally. And in turn, you're building yourself an asset which will support you to thrive as the CEO. So I know it's easy to maybe listen to some of these suggestions today and think, I don't have time for this, or, that's nice, maybe I'll look at it later. And I want to say that I get it, but often a little bit of effort, a little bit of thought into this, a little bit of time will go a really, really long way. And, next minute, it's going to be a few years' time down the track. You'll look back and you'll be able to see that you've not only built a successful business, but like a true brand where people want to work, and a community of people who actually want to be on the journey with you. And it doesn't get much better than that. Okay, so that's it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Big Dreams, Great Teams podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, but most importantly, share it with another business owner who you know will benefit from listening. And if you do that on socials, make sure you tag me and I'll happily reshare that and share the love back to you. So thank you so much for tuning in. And until next week, I hope you have fun.